Joe Rogan recently sat down with Arsenio Hall on an episode of The Joe Rogan Experience, and the conversation drifted into politics in a way that feels very familiar if you followed Rogan over the last decade. At one point, Joe Rogan described himself as politically homeless, arguing that the American system forces people to pick sides in a way that doesn't actually reflect how most people think. According to Rogan, modern politics has basically turned into something like sports fandom. People
Mean
It's
anything anymore.
accepting that a lot of things are valuable that are not a part of your party's philosophy. I think we have to be willing to compromise and move a little bit. And that goes for all politicians. We have to be able to move a little bit to be logical and serve all of America.
For sure. But I think the problem is parties all have to agree, and then they form ideologies that you cannot stray from. So if you're one of those people that says, like, hey, maybe an open border's a bad idea because terrorists can come through, like, oh, no, no one's illegal on stolen land. Everybody gets crazy because there's a party line that you have to stick with. This is today. Today, things are incredibly polarizing. But if you go back and listen to some of the things that Clinton was saying when he was running for president and when he was president, boy, these are like almost right-wing talking points in a lot of ways. But they're not. But it's not
a little
really,
to the right.
But it's not really right-wing. It's just sensible. Like, what is right and what is left? Left used to be, first of all, freedom of speech was of paramount importance. It used to be that they were very open-minded. It used to be like that education was of crucial importance, and that discourse was crucially important, and that you have to look out for citizens in sense of like having social safety nets and having welfare programs and food stamps and all those things which are really important for a society because not everybody is in the same position in life. Like,
And by the way, when you deal with left and right, you have to almost attach a year because we've seen parties change.
Yeah.
I'm always reminded that the Democratic Party was the party of the Klan, if you go far
Right.
enough back.
Rogan calling himself politically homeless is interesting because over the past few years, a lot of listeners feel like his political orbit has slowly shifted more to the right. That perception has turned into a constant talking point among comedians and media commentators. Some longtime fans argue the tone of the show changed during the pandemic era when Joe Rogan started pushing back on public health policies, questioning mainstream media narratives, and bringing on more guests who align with conservative viewpoints. Rogan himself, though, has pushed back hard on that label, saying he doesn't belong to any single political camp and that his views are all over the map. He points out that he supported things across the spectrum, from same-sex marriage and drug legalization to gun rights and free speech. But even with that explanation, perception still plays a huge role in how people see him. In the comedy world, figures like D.L. Hewley have openly argued that podcasters like Rogan helped shape the current political climate in the United States. Hewley has
Sticking by your vote, and you understand, but it's the people who were so integral in helping to destroy democracy who are pretending like as if they didn't know what they were doing. Like those podcast bros, I think they have a lot of blood on their hand. I think that they are complicit in destroying democracy. I think if you listen to a podcast for anything but any entertainment, that's why this thing's called Uncertain. I don't know shit. But if you listen to a podcast for anything other than entertainment, or maybe how to grow a plant or make something to eat, if you listen to a podcast for medical device, you should fucking die.
So, DL, if you were to meet Rogan, chances are
I've met Rogan. I know him.
he'd probably be really warm. He'd probably say you're the same true 150 comedians as him. What would you respond back with?
First off, I didn't like the way he said nigga. I didn't like that happened, and I said that then. I didn't like how Spotify used the talents of black people. They paid them nothing but use the cumulative, licenses and all that kind of shit to give him money.
But Rogan's politically homeless identity gets even more complicated when you zoom out and look at how audiences actually interpret his platform. Critics argue that even if Joe Rogan doesn't see himself as part of any ideological tribe, the guests he brings on and the conversations he amplifies still end up shaping public opinion in a big way. The podcast is often described as a massive cultural force, reaching millions of listeners and sometimes driving political conversations far beyond traditional media outlets. And that opens up a much bigger question. Hold up, is the American two-party system itself partially fueling the polarization Rogan and Arsenio Hall were talking about? When you compare the United Kingdom to the United Kingdom, the contrast is actually pretty interesting. On paper, the UK also looks like a two-party system dominated by the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, but in reality, the political landscape
have as the party most supported by 18 to 25-year-olds. The Green Party has doubled its support from that age group, while Labour's has collapsed, according to our poll. In March, 16% of young adults supported the Greens. Now, it's 32%. Meanwhile, Labour's has fallen from 43% to 25%. Reform UK's support from young adults has also grown to 20%, while just 11% of them support the Tories. Just like Nigel Farage says his ambition is to
replace the Conservatives.
The new Green Party leader, Zach Polanski, says,
"My message to Labour is very clear. We're here to replace."
The United States has essentially operated under a two-party framework dominated by Democratic Party and Republican Party since the Civil War era, and third parties rarely break through in Congress or state legislatures. That doesn't mean they don't exist. Groups like the Libertarian Party or the Green Party consistently run candidates, but the structure of American elections makes it extremely hard for them to gain real, lasting representation. Joe Rogan has argued that money and political donations only tighten that grip even more. From his perspective, massive fundraising networks and corporate backing essentially build a political machine that keeps the same two parties locked in place. And the end result, he says, is a system where voters often feel forced into what he describes as choosing the lesser
logical centrist government that just says, look, there's a lot of things that we should do to make this country a better place. We can do these things, and we don't have to attach them to left or right. And anything that the left says that's logical, the people on the right, they immediately dismiss it because it's coming from the left. And that happens the same where the left does it to people on the right. It's dumb. It's a team thing. It's like the Dolphins versus the Raiders. Yeah. It's just you pick a fucking team and you lay that team.
What a horrible
sucks.
game, by the way.
You pick a team and your team rules and the other team sucks. And there's a lot of people out there that are they're not open-minded, and they love a good rigid ideology that they can adhere to. So now I don't have to think for myself. I have a predetermined pattern of opinions that I could just adopt, and I'll just accept those, and that's how I think, and that's what I'm going to argue with.
When I was young, I used to, in some jokes, say my heart is Democratic, but my wallet is Republican.
Yeah.
But it's not even that simple anymore. It's gotten much more complicated.
Yeah, much, much more complicated. It's like, everyone should be anti-fraud, whether you're on the left or on the right.
Or unless you're committing fraud.
Right.
Then,
right.
Then I'm pro-me.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people that, are certainly benefiting from fraud would like to dismiss it, whether it's the left or the right. Yeah. There's we have a problem in this country where we have a two-party system. Two-party systems are inherently flawed because there's no fucking way that one side is going to represent you entirely. And it's much more likely if you have 5, 10, 15 different parties that are all legitimate, because we don't have another legitimate party. If you vote for Libertarian, and I've voted Libertarian before, you're basically saying, fuck these people. You know?